Hi, how are you? I am Monica Duperon Rodriguez. I am in executive protection and also specialize in event security globally. And I'm here with Susanne Dancer, who is extremely knowledgeable when it comes to etiquette. Suzanne, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and where you're located?
My name is Suzanne Dancer. I live in Brisbane, Australia. I have a background as a butler and valet and was trained and worked in London, England for 4 years. I also have a background in security because I recently gained my security license for Brisbane and for Queensland, and I want to marry the two up.
Fantastic. I think that's an excellent idea, and congratulations on getting your security licensing in those areas. That's exciting.
Yes, it is.
So, we're going to talk about etiquette, and it's about protocol and diplomacy. It's also about, um, respect and image that we're trying to portray. And when we're working with a client, we are an extension of the client and who they are. An executive protection agent's going to a black tie affair with a client. It's easier to talk to men about etiquette than it is to women. Can you tell me a little bit about why that is?
Um, Part of etiquette is knowing how to dress appropriately for an event, whether it's going to the beach with the client, whether it's going to a black tie, white tie event, whatever. Um, People who have come from a military or police background know that they just wear their best uniform. So that's easy. And for guys, you just tell them to get a really good tuxedo, get it fitted, get it tailored, and that. And then you can tell them how to address people, because part of etiquette too is how to, what I call eat at table. Um, and the best way to actually do that is to have them set a table and to know how to use all the knives and forks and spoons and glasses, because I've seen people come into events where I've been serving and they look at all the cutlery on the table, or as a friend of mine calls it, weaponry, um, and they're going, oh, I'm going to start from the outside and work your way in,
Right.
all the courses and all this type, and this is what that's for. The little one's for white wine, the bigger one's for red wine. There's a glass, there's champagne, there may be um, a liqueur glass there or something like that.
Right.
And it's easy because men, you just give them dot points and everything. Women tend to ask more questions, and it is a little bit harder with women when it comes to the etiquette of dress,
Mm.
because they've got to go with cultural things. If you are, there's people from the Middle East there, they've got to go with the etiquette of the actual of what black tie is. I try to strip down all the fluff that you get off a website or out of a book about things. I mean, there are some lovely books, but Emily Post is about an inch thick. And it's a wonderful book to have. It's a wonderful resource to have, and so is the internet. But you can go down a rabbit hole
Right.
where people with insecurity just want to have, okay, guys wear a tuxedo, you dress, you address this person as this, you address that person as that, and every other time after that you call them sir or ma'am.
Hmm.
Like if you were to address His Majesty King Charles, it would be His Majesty, and then every other time it would be sir.
Hmm.
If you were to address the Princess of Wales, you would be address her as Catherine, Princess of Wales. And then every other time after that you would call her ma'am.
That's interesting. So when it comes to women and dress, obviously there's a wider array of choices in terms of dress for a black tie affair. And when you're in security, you absolutely must be comfortable, and you're not going to
Oh,
go
yes.
in stiletto heels, for example.
Oh,
So even though it's nice to have a wider array of choices, we also have to be even more mindful of the culture that we're in, and make sure that we're dressing more conservatively rather than, fashionable.
and what we've got to remember as security people, we represent our client. And that's the first thing. We're not just there to protect them, we are there as their representative. And a lot of other people, including all the other security people, will go, oh, and they'll look at you, and as especially as a female, they will judge you differently than if a guy is just in an ill-fitting tuxedo.
Right.
And they'll go, oh, he hasn't had time, it's just a rental.
Right.
Whereas they look at a girl, or a lady, I should say, not a girl, there's no girl, and they will go, oh, her dress is too short, but there's people from the Middle East here. She should have known that
Right.
before.
Exactly. And it's not just a dress that's too short. It's also, you're strapless, you're showing the
Yes,
shoulders, showing too much cleavage, showing the back, too much of the back. So we have to make sure that whatever dress we decide to wear, if we're wearing a dress, and, when I've been in some of these situations, I've always asked the client what they would prefer for me to wear
yes,
to this type of event. And typically, I've been, instructed by the client to dress like everybody else because they obviously want us to blend in. So, we have to find a dress that is not too low on the front, is not sleeveless, actually has sleeves, either half sleeves or full sleeves. Obviously, the length of the dress also plays a big role in what I'm doing, because it also has to be comfortable. I have to be able to move in it. And many instances, I have to move quickly. So it has to be something that I
yes.
am comfortable, can move, I'm flex, I can do backflips in this dress. That
Yeah,
is the key point.
that's the thing with women in executive protection, in security, when they are working events, when they're with their client, they have to be able to move into it. That's why I've seen a lot of people going, it's a size, oh, it looks wonderful on the shop, but if you get the next size up, you can move a little bit better. I've seen lady executive protection people. I saw it recently at an event where I was working, and her dress caught her up and she fell quite
Oh,
badly.
that's not good.
And it was, and that
So,
because that's the other thing too. You've got
yeah,
to be able to think about
I
your
think,
safety.
yeah, no, I agree. The majority of the women in executive protection don't tend to wear dresses, unless specifically asked by the client or
Yes,
advised by the client that, because of the type of event that it should be a dress, or that they need to blend in with everybody else. Those are amazing points that you're making, especially when it comes to women in executive protection. I think that it's also important that we understand the appropriate way to also address our colleagues, when we're working with the client. And so coming up with a really good process on how to refer to your colleagues while you're still, present with the client is extremely important. What do you think about that?
if you don't know, okay, if you've worked with someone for a long time or seen them around and you are familiar with them, I would still address them as Mr., Ms., Mrs., whatever their preferred. I mean, I've met an executive protection agent recently who's got a doctorate, so he is Doctor something.
Mm,
Not that I call him that. usually calling something else, but that's not the point. You call them still by a formal name. And then if they say, please call me this, you don't use nicknames, you use their full names. If their name is Nicholas, you don't call them Nick or Nick. If you call me Suzanne, Ms. Dancer is how I would say, this is, you could either call me Suzanne. If you're really familiar with me and we are away from clients and we're in the green room and we're doing things like this, then you can get to more familial names with people. You still don't use
Right.
nicknames.
Yeah.
You find the things that are still acceptable to you, because
Right.
as I said, some of these people, both male and female, have come from a military background, so they're used to that really stiff formality,
Right.
that
It's
everyone
true.
is dressed by their rank. Everyone, you know
No, it's
I
true. I still refer to my former lieutenant as LT,
yeah,
which is short for lieutenant. My former major, who's long retired, still call her major. It's just it's a habit. I think that we get into when we see a certain person, we know what
yes.
rank they were, and so we always refer to them and either by
I
their
mean,
rank or their last name. Let's talk about how to eat when you're in front of the client and their guests, or you're at a formal event, because knowing what cutlery to wear, you can kind of get past that. Sometimes you wait a minute and you look at the other person, you see what fork they pick up, and that's the one you
yes.
when it's you and the team, the executive protection team, the protection team, we still have to maintain a certain, decorum. So how should we eat when we're in front of a client in a formal setting?
Okay. If you're going, I'll start from the top and you're out with the client, you are eating at their table or at a table nearby. You can always find out from the event organizer what's going to be on the menu. And then you can go online and find out what type of cutlery gets used for each type of thing. A lot of times these days, they don't use all the things. They don't. If you're dining at Downton Abbey, you would have fish knives, you'd have oyster forks, you'd have this, you'd have that. In modern day society, they've restructured that and just gone with, okay, we're going to use, there's usually no more than 3 or 4 lots of cutlery with a plate. And most people, when you have a plate on the table and there's usually a napkin always goes on your lap. The only time that it ever goes here is when you're eating at a lobster hut and there's no one else around, or they're all doing the same thing, or they're eating Italian and tons of spaghetti. You have all your cutlery. You start from the outside cutlery, whether it's soup, and when you're doing that, you make sure that you never fill your spoon. A soup spoon is usually a rounded one.
Right.
Dessert spoons are usually a little bit more oval or a little bit more almond shaped, if you
They're
know what I
also a
mean.
little bit smaller, dessert
Yes, soup
spoons.
spoons tend to be a bit deeper and a little bit smaller.
Yes.
I always try and make sure that, and when you're eating them, it's never towards yourself. It's always, you always take your spoon away from yourself, because that way, if something happens, if someone bumps your arm when they're serving drinks, or you're too close to the person beside you,
Mhm.
it won't spill on you.
I think that's
Um,
an extremely important point for left-handers, because you tend
oh
to
yes,
bump elbows with the
yes.
right-handed person. Yeah, I've run into that.
Um, and then you usually, courses are usually soup, then entree, and usually have a smaller knife and fork for an entree. Then you go to mains, and then you go to dessert. Depending on what type of dessert you have, you can have a fork and a spoon if it's like something like a tart or something like this. And then you have your array of glasses and everything. Champagne glasses are commonly known. They're the tall flutes. Red wine glasses are usually bigger than white wine. And then you always have a water glass. A water glass is either a tumbler or it can be a taller glass. Most of the time you will have a tumbler because it's just easier to, part fill the glass, and then it's not, you don't, again, it's about holding things correctly so that if service staff are there or other people around the table or someone walking past, if they bump you, you're not going to spill it all over yourself.
Right.
Because
That's
the
an
other
excellent point.
And eating and take small bites.
Small
Whether it's
bites.
small bites, whether it's a steak or whatever. I usually tell people, if they're out with their principal and they're at a restaurant, and they've gone for Italian and everything like this, don't eat spaghetti. It's the messiest version of pasta to eat. Get something that you guys are either going to be pick up in a spoon or, put a fork into. Something like ravioli penne or something like that. Yeah, you can try all the
Right.
everything you leave the spaghetti for your personal life.
And
Or
it always falls on the white shirt.
And yeah,
it always
don't.
goes in the way. It's like it attracts the spaghetti sauce. Moving right on to the least favorite of executive protection or protective services is all of the policies and procedures that could potentially be handed over to you so that you can read and familiarize yourself when you're in an operation. But when it comes to etiquette, there are some organizations and governmental departments that will give you a pile of paperwork to to go over protocol. So let's talk a little bit about the least favorite part of the job when it comes to executive protection and etiquette and these protocols that we might actually get.
Protocols, yes. As I said, I've worked in England. I've come across a lot of people who are government ministers, the Prime Minister of England. I've served royalty. I have served the upper echelons of society. I've served people who, and this is not just including English people. This is including people from the States, from Canada, from Europe and the Middle East. I worked for as a security administrator for a private bank.
Okay.
And
do they all come with protocols and
oh yes, the thing is, everyone thinks that etiquette and protocol is all this fluffy stuff that's only for rich people. Every part of your life is governed by etiquette and protocols. Okay, when most people call it good manners, which is the thing where I try, because with me, I'm trying to strip down all this fluffy stuff into basic English language and reduce the pile of stuff that you might get from the State Department to 3 or 4 pages. Everyone could read in the hour before they went and got a client or had a client with them for both. So
give me an example of what you would find in one of these protocol binders, books, guides.
Okay, etiquette is how we do things.
Right.
It's all the rules of eating and dressing and
speaking
and everything. Not just addressing your superiors and other colleagues and everything like this, but how to speak. Don't use slang words. make sure that if you are using words that they don't mean something really bad in another language. And
Yes.
also the things too of actually knowing a few words in a host's language.
Right.
Like if your principal is having a formal business meeting with a dinner with someone who's from Japan or from the Middle East, there are certain cultural things that you've got to learn too. Like uh and the good things for them too is with Japanese people, even today, it is very rare for women to be able to put their hand out and shake a Japanese businessman's hand.
I've learned through all of my travels that I always wait. I wait to
Yes.
see how the male reacts to my presence because I'm a woman. And even though I'm in business and many times I'm the leader, I will wait before I put my hand out because there are some instances where you don't shake the hand. That's just not part of the culture.
And
And
the
which
Middle East, well,
yeah,
I
and the Middle East is a very good example, but there's many
yes.
other cultures that we need to, just kind of understand, which actually leads me to the next section of this conversation, and that's cultural sensitivity. Because, as we were saying, there's many customs and different cultural differences that we need to be aware of because they're hosting us. If we're traveling to their country, then we need to put in the effort to show them that not only, we respect them and we're very, happy that they're hosting us, but, we show them the respect by actually understanding their cultural norms. And also, like you said, if you learn a couple of phrases in their language, it just changes the whole dynamic of the relationship because now they really see that you put in the effort and they appreciate that so much.
If you're working with another EP team in that country, which you usually do because you've got to have locals on your team, you learn things like how do I get to the hospital, the restaurant. If you're an EP driver, you've got to learn things about the car. It's most of the time that person will speak some English. You've got to make that respect, and most women will go, well, and they prickle. But if they wait that 30 seconds and introduce by your number two, who might be a male, the respect from the host country will be a lot higher because they understand that yes, you're the lead, you're the team leader, but you respected their ways enough to go, this person, or your principal may introduce you.
People that you are with, especially when you're in a
And
host
also,
country, or if you're hosting people from another country, the people really they really appreciate and respect the understanding of their culture. When we're taking the time to learn about other cultures, and we also take the time to learn, how to say hello, put the effort into it, and they see that, it changes the entire dynamic of that relationship. So understanding those the cultural
yes.
norms is extremely important. It's imperative,
And
especially
and
when
the
we want
best
to
thing,
have a good relationship with the people that we're with.
oh, State Department, your diplomatic services in whatever country that you're in, and
Mhm.
go, excuse me, I'm going here. What are some of the things that I need to know? Because they've got people on the ground that know everything.
Absolutely. I
And that,
think, at
or
least for
even call that embassy that's in your country.
the embassies, I've always gone to the embassies and gotten information from the
Yes,
embassy, from our embassy contacts. And there is such an excellent resource when you're visiting another country to just go to your embassy in that country and or talk to them. If you just call, they're amazing
there
at
are
what they
always
do.
protocol officers there. That's
They
their job.
And they're amazing.
Recently, I was involved with the World Protocol Day, which is done with the a protocol institute in the Netherlands at The Hague,
Mhm.
and they were the host for it. And the amount of information that I learnt from people who are former ambassadors, they're protocol officers for businesses, for governments, for, they teach etiquette and protocol. They, those types of things are good resources to get into
Yeah.
if you're, you know, do a class. Go
Right.
and do a class, but when you do a class, make sure that it's the right place for you to do, because there are a lot of people out there, more so in the States, that teach etiquette and protocol.
You know, when it comes to that kind of stuff, there's one book that I always recommend. I don't know if you've actually read it, but it's called Kiss, Bow, or Shake Hands: The Best-Selling Guide to Doing Business. Um, have you read that book?
I haven't read it, but I have heard of it. I've read part of it because I got part of it as something else, but it
Mhm.
is a really good book.
Yes, I
Uh,
agree.
Emily Post is one of my favorites, and she's a good person to have in your library if you just want to go deep diving on
Being a
something.
woman, you have to take it even, a bit deeper because when in doing business, they're usually talking about men, so men do this, men do that. But as a woman, you have to stop and say, okay, I am, I'm in the presence of a rabbi. Do I shake hands or not? No,
No,
I do not. No, I do not. I know
no.
that, but it's important for people to know that's something that you just don't do. Looking at do I look at somebody in the eyes or do I not? And those type of things, it's a little bit different for women. So we have to take a moment before you start putting your hand out so you could shake it like you do in the United States, and you want to squeeze hard to show them that you're strong, because that's
Yeah.
that's what we do. But
Well,
in other cultures,
rabbis,
that's not what you do.
yeah, rabbis are a really good point in reference.
Yes, I know.
Women don't touch. Contact is always important, whether you're a man or you're a woman, whether you are in the Middle East or the Far East. That shows that you have respect
Mhm.
for them and
Right.
you're not hiding. Because even in the Middle East, if you don't have eye contact with them, especially when you greet them, they will think that you are hiding something, and that
Mhm.
trust,
It's gone. Just like
it's
that.
gone.
It's gone.
And it's very hard with Middle Eastern men of any rank to get that back.
So, we're coming up on time here. The main things are respect, consideration, honesty, and kindness. What are 10 etiquette rules that you can give us as a takeaway um, for the people that are listening right now?
Dress appropriately and comfortably. Make sure that you have, if you are, especially if you're female, that you have the right head covering, whether it's a hat, whether it's a scarf, whatever. Make sure that you know how to eat at table, whether it's an informal event or it's a formal event. Everything, what you learn on a formal scale can go back to, having dinner with your family.
Right.
Learn a few phrases in that language. That comes to the consideration and respect. Know how to address people. And, it's easy to look up,
Mhm.
you know, or you can
It's a
just
matter
ask.
of taking the time to do it.
It's a
You're
and see, that's the thing too. With all of this, it's a matter of taking the time, the 5-minute phone call to a protocol officer in an embassy, or even the personal assistant, executive assistant of the person that you're hosting.
right. Yes.
They will know and they will tell you,
Mhm.
especially if you are an executive driver and you are driving that person. You know,
Yeah, I do have the list that you sent me.
Yes.
And one of the things that you have on here that I think is extremely important is be mindful of your language.
Yes.
I think that that's extremely important.
As an Australian, I tend to use a lot of words as slang, and even talking with American colleagues, they look at me as if I'm a bit odd, which I am, but I've got to be but Australians and English and people in the United States are divided by a common language.
Mm,
So you've got to be mindful, even if they speak the same language as you, of what those words mean somewhere else.
right.
I was
Yes.
I was working an event last year with a group of American EP agents. I was their kind of liaison-y person between that and everything else. And I had to take a couple of the guys aside and then I said, don't use those words, because a lot of the security personnel that were working the events, they aren't all English. We've got a lot of people from India here. We've got a lot of people who they work security as because they're students or whatever.
Mhm.
It's a second job for them.
Right.
Um, so you've got to be mindful of other
Yeah.
cultures in that everyone speaks English,
I think
but
it's extremely important too because coming from law enforcement, there's some
yeah,
language that is not favorable, that
yeah,
is commonly used, and if you're in the military, also utilize some of that language, and so being mindful of that language is extremely important. And then the other thing that I wanted to make sure to note from your 10 etiquette rules, is being respectful of personal space and being a good listener. Because I've had conversations with people where they're in the middle of doing other things and they're not taking the time to actually listen to you, and you're saying something and you just don't feel heard. And so if you're in the middle of trying to message the rest of the team and the client's trying to say something to you, put the phone away and listen to what the client's trying to tell you, and then address the team, because um, you want to make sure that the client always feels heard. And the other thing is respecting, personal space. And I think that's
especially
extremely
again,
important too.
especially amongst people from the Middle East, from the Far East.
And
Um,
then also
it,
understanding where cultures, because there are some cultures that um their norm is being right in your personal space.
yes, you've got to learn not to back up. I
And just
had
just take a deep breath and deal with it and then move away. But you don't want people getting too close, because you also want to be able to react if something is going to happen in executive protection or even in security. So you don't want people in your personal space. You want to maintain a good distance, from other people. But there's certain cultures where they come right up to you and it's like, okay, now how do I manage this? Because they're in my space and I need to be able to react.
um,
So, Suzanne, we're coming at time. One last point for the audience before we take off here.
just remember that it's with all the fluff of etiquette and protocol, when it comes down to it, it is basic good manners. Saying please and thank you, that's the start of it all. And it's not hard. Even if you just have a list on your phone or something, you put down your own 10
Right.
rules that you follow, and make sure that you do follow them and think of them and be mindful of that. it is about being mindful and respectful and, you know, kind, because everything comes down to that. And people see that you are being that, they will have that much respect. Even if you make a mistake, if they know that you're trying and that you understand this much, but you may not understand that much, they will have that much more respect for you and know that they can approach you about the rest of the stuff.
Sounds great.
You know,
Thank you
whether
so
it's working
much.
with, yes.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. We are at time. I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with me. And for the audience, if you have any questions or want to learn more about etiquette, please feel free to contact Suzanne Dancer. She's on LinkedIn. And of course, you could always contact me. And thank you again for being here. Have a wonderful
Thank you
day.
very much, Monica. It has been a pleasure. Thank
It's been
you.
a pleasure for me too. Take care, Suzanne.